Welcome. This is going to be my first of many movie reviews that I'm going to be tackling for the new site. In addition, I figure if we're going to do this, we're going to do this right. The first movie we're going to review is, that's right, the very first Iron Man movie starring Robert Downey Jr. This started back in 2008 and, in my opinion, is still one of the best movies today. It has plenty of rewatchability. The only major difference is, as the franchise went on, Terrence Howard is no longer part of it, is now replaced by Don Cheadle. I will be getting more into that later. But at the same time, Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark slash Iron Man is one of the best, I quote, best superhero movies to come out and to start the Marvel franchise in a long, long time. Think about back in the day when we first started with comic book movies. We started off with, the original Superman back in the 70s, then build up to Batman. That was kind of a lull for a little bit until we hit the late 1990s to early 2000s, where then we are introduced by Fox and Sony to have Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four. In addition, yes, I will be reviewing the Fantastic Four and the first Spider-Man trilogy in their entirety. But for right now, for today, it is going to be Iron Man. We need to get on the road to Age of Ultron, and we're going to do this right. Now, I'm going to point out a lot of the advantages to this movie and a lot of the disadvantages about this movie. My God, disadvantages? Yes, there are some flaws with the movie, but in my view, there is a lot more positives than there are flaws. In my opinion, let's get started with how this movie started. Now, this movie starts off in the Middle East. Well, there was another movie that started off in the Middle East that wasn't considered a comic book movie per se, more as an action movie for toys in the early 80s, and that was Transformers. And yes, I will be reviewing Transformers. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm cringing over Transformers already, as you can tell. But I will be reviewing them in full. Now, I love how the Middle East starts off in this series compared to Transformers. Transformers is like, oh yes, we're already in the Middle East, we're already fighting, and that's fine. This movie is the same way, but in my opinion, it starts off a lot better. You're not just automatically thrown into action scenes. There's not pointless explosions. Thanks, Michael Bay! But Jon Favreau doing this movie, in my opinion, is still one of the best movies ever. Iron Man 1 holds up even today. And even on Rotten Tomatoes, it's still holding at a 90% rating. In my opinion, if you go to Rotten Tomatoes for anything, just check out the movie reviews. Go in thinking that if you're going to have any doubt about a movie, double check with Rotten Tomatoes. Please do. They're not paying me to say it, but I love honest reviews. And that's one thing I'm trying to give. I want to give an honest review and an honest opinion based on myself and what I've heard from other people. But in that being said, with Iron Man is an awesome roller coaster ride that you always want to get on. You always want to enjoy this movie. It is never dated, but even there's only one dated reference in it, and it's at the very beginning where Robert Downey Jr. says, I don't want to see this on your MySpace page. Now, if he would have said, oh, I don't want to see this on your Facebook page, that'd be fine. But everything else, I've not seen any other dated reference for the entire movie. It is by far, it goes in depth with the entire character and even the business of Stark Industries, where they're trying to build up everything. And he's not really portrayed as a villain per se. And I love how the villains in this movie are portrayed as, you don't think they're the minor villains. You get build up, build up, build up, then it gets to a grinding halt for a minute, and then you realize, oh, it's going this way. And I love that. I love how it's going to take a sudden jolt in the right direction. It's not deviating at all. And everyone says, "Oh yes, at the very beginning, I knew he was going to be the villain." I'm like, first off, this is one of the few movies I will turn my brain off to that. I don't want to think, "Oh yes, he's the automatic villain" just because they showed him at a friggin' page. Look, you don't want that going into a movie like this. Sometimes you need to shut your brain off, and that's what I do every time I see this movie. And yes, there are some flaws I do want to get into. Number one, I'm still wrapping my head around how he built the first Iron Man suit from scraps in the bunker when he pretty much explained that they built like all the best scraps for the first arc reactor they put in his chest so he can move around better. Which I kind of look at and say, okay, so you're going to use the rest of the metal for building the armor? But then I'm still wrapping my head around like, okay, how did you get propulsion systems to become flamethrowers? And that's the only thing about the beginning is even the build up to the Iron Man suit, where you're just kind of thinking to yourself, this is where my brain gets kicked back on accidentally. But after that, he gets flown back to America, where you think, oh yes, now he could just relax after his experience for a little bit and try and take everything in. No, he doesn't. And it's like, okay, I already built the first Iron Man suit. I have to go by memory now to try and build a new one. And when they introduce the construction of the building of the Mark II, I love it. I love how it gets built. I love how it gets constructed. I love how, even from memory, he's trying to incorporate, the arc reactor he's got in his chest to building for a new suit. And at the same time, I've seen people say, well, if he's the smartest person on the planet, shouldn't he already do this? Look, Tony Stark is a genius at construction. He's one of the most impulsive people you'll ever meet. And believe me, that's not a bad thing. For being impulsive, fine, be impulsive. That's part of being human. It's like I'm just gonna go out and buy ice cream today. In Tony Stark's words, I'm gonna go and do something crazy. I'm gonna go fly into outer space. Wow, that's your ice cream bar? I'm gonna fly into space and get frozen? But at the same time, the flight sequence with the Mark II is incredible. Even the scene where they're flying around the Ferris wheel to him trying to get into space and then the suit accidentally shuts itself down, and then he's got to reboot it. It was great. And the fact that as soon as it happened, he dawned on him was like, okay, so I can't just use normal metal to fly into space. What can I use that's space related that can do this? So in case I have to fly to higher altitudes. Hey, fine. It was perfect. It was great. And I love how it thought through. Then when Jarvis was building it, giving you the time frame, then he went out and said, okay, that's done. There's nothing more I can do right now. I'm going to go out and hang out with people. And fine. It's showing you both sides of a person that you really want to relate to. Now, I'm going to pinpoint right now where I really love this movie and where I really get on board with it every time. I view this movie more as a video game movie. And people are going to question that. What? A video game movie? Well, it was never based on a video game. Well, yeah, that's true. It was never based on a video game. But the biggest video game that I can relate to, and a lot of people, if you actually think about it, is very relatable, is the Mega Man series. More specifically, the Mega Man X series. If you actually think about it, what does X do in all the games? He keeps getting upgraded, he keeps getting stronger, and as much as he doesn't want to fight, it's the closest thing we have to a video game movie for Mega Man. And I look at that and thinking, okay, I can see why. because for the longest time the technology has not existed, and the suit looks real. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of CGI in it, but it actually looks like something you could wear that could be used for combat, and that could be donned for multiple uses. I love it. And the only gripe I have is the arc reactor in his chest after he puts the new one in. And this goes for all the Iron Man movies, not just the first one. The he explains how the first arc reactor was, yeah, it was built from scraps, and it kind of burned itself out. But what about the rest of the arc reactors that he builds? Do they automatically burn out too? Like, how many arc reactors has he built in secret just to keep up with this? Because, yeah, it's to show that he's got to keep the shrapnel out of his chest. But at the same time, okay, if he overuses the Iron Man armor, I'm going to short out the arc reactor and kill myself. I like that. That's the only. That's one of the biggest gripes. I'll go into the other gripes with the arc reactor later, especially when it touches more on Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3. Heck, even a little bit in Avengers. But Iron Man 1, in conclusion, even the final battle with the Ironmonger was great. I mean, I wish that battle was a lot longer, and even the deleted scenes on the Blu-ray disc. I mean, yeah, I don't mind some of the, a lot of stuff that got put on the cutting room floor, and the only ones I wish would have were put in the movie was more of the construction of the Iron Man suits. More of the behind behind the scenes of Tony Stark. I wish that was more in depth, but at the same time, I understand some of the stuff gets put on the cutting room floor. I will be touching on more of them later, because there are some other movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that have been cut. I wish that haven't been cut. But at the same time, this is, in my opinion, a near perfect movie that we're ever going to get from Marvel. And I completely agree. And my rating system, I will be giving this a 9 out of 10. It is not a perfect movie, but it is plenty rewatchable, like some of the other movies that have come out. Like, Captain America Winter Soldier. How many times have you watched that movie? Like Guardians of the Galaxy. How many times have you rewatched that movie? Heck, even the first Avengers movie. How many times have people rewatched that movie? They're fun movies, just like Iron Man 1 is. It's a fun roller coaster ride that started this whole cinematic universe. And I want you to know that, yes, I'm trying to take a more serious approach on it. I do not want to keep making angry rants all the time, but at the same time, I like to make things comical. I like things to try and make a lot more sense, but at the same time, I want to throw more comedy in. But on these movie reviews, I will be doing the more serious approach, unless I write up otherwise, especially for the Marvel movies, because they are so important to not only myself, but to a lot of comic book fans out there. These movies have really hit us in a big way, and people are really starting to realize that you can't just take a boring character like Spider-Man, which a lot of people have called boring because they wrote him up boring, and they finally portray him in a complete action movie where the explosions make sense, everything happens for a reason, and even all the supporting characters have a role where everything gets developed slowly, and that's great. We need everything to develop slowly, especially in this Marvel universe, and I'm glad that they're going to keep Robert Downey Jr. on as Iron Man for right now, and if Marvel decides to say, hey, we're going to go in this other direction, and look, if they have to recast them, they have to recast them. But at the same time, please just keep supporting and give me an honest review down below. If you completely disagree with me, that's fine. Or if you completely agree with me, please rate below and have a good day. Thanks, guys.